I want to continue this conversation about Plato's theory of forms and whether or not they conflict with modern scientific understanding. I answered that question earlier in a video titled, "Is the pursuit of truth necessary?" That's the question that I want to continue with. I want to dive deeper into that because the implications of pursuing truth or not are dire. And I think that today, fundamental truth, objective reality, is not taken very seriously, or it's not considered at all. I think many of us live in subjective reality, shackled by the flesh. We are subject to our nature, our emotions, and so we create our worldviews rooted in subjective reality. And subjective reality is only true for us, of course. And if it's only true for us, then it's subject to change. And then if it's subject to change, well, the foundation of our reality doesn't really exist. It's fleeting, it's wavering. And in order to lead a successful life where we are unshakable and our emotions aren't liable to unravel before us, and reality isn't going to collapse in on top of us, we need to stand on concrete, solid ground, which is fundamental, objective truth. So, before we dive into that, let's reiterate and establish the existence of fundamental truth, because there are people that don't believe fundamental truth exists. They believe that everything around us is subjective experience. If that's the case, then I don't exist. Then myself isn't here. And everything you're doing doesn't matter. So, if we don't want to live with a nihilistic view, which I encourage you not to, because it's not a very productive outlook on the world, we should believe things that empower us. I encourage you to think about the implications of an all subjective reality. So, how do we know fundamental truth exists? Let's disprove everyone that thinks we live in a subjective reality. In comparing the theory of forms with empirical approaches to science, things like physics, things like mathematics, things like neuroscience, we find that the theory of forms is actually the foundation on which empirical sciences have been built upon. All of these empirical sciences, physics, mathematics, neuroscience, etc., are rooted in truth. The common ground they all stand on is to maintain objectivity. And the reason is because without truth, none of them can exist. Physics does not work in the absence of Newton's laws. Mathematics doesn't work if 2 plus 2 equals 4 doesn't happen every single time. Thankfully it does, and so we can make sense of the world around us. Fundamental truth is how we as individuals make sense of the world around us. Truths are what we create our worldview around. Now that doesn't mean that what we believe to be true is the fundamental truth. And that's why these conversations, this deliberation is important, because there is a correct answer. There is a correct way for us to live our lives, especially if we believe in the existence of fundamental truths. Because starting at the very foundation of our existence, let's say morality, right and wrong, the very basis on which every decision is made, does exist if we believe in fundamental truths. And so, why do so many of us then fall victim to subjective realities? Not to get into the ego, as I don't think it's entirely necessary to discuss on the topic of subjective reality. The ego wants to preserve itself, and thankfully it does, because otherwise we might not be here. But it encourages us to prioritize things that may not be true. It's very difficult to think objectively because we prioritize our emotions We prioritize self-preservation, things that make us feel good. We don't want to accept the fact that what we've believed our entire lives might be false, that there might be an alternative that's better than that. Because if we don't lead ourselves to it and someone tells us that, then we've failed and someone is better than us. The truth is, that's the first step towards establishing a cohesive worldview. When your worldview is comprised of subjective truths, beliefs that you've accumulated over time, your worldview can collapse, and the reality that you've created is liable to cease, to just unravel before you. And that's when someone challenges your beliefs. That's when you've been going on a path for quite some time and someone introduces something that completely shakes you and sends your world into the gutter. That's because your fundamental reality wasn't actually fundamental, it was subjective. And that's why fundamental truth is important. So how can we reorient ourselves around fundamental truth instead of subjective reality? Well, and it's difficult, we need to accept that, or first we need to think about our worldview and what our worldview does for us. Our worldview is comprised of our beliefs, and our combination of beliefs seep through in every decision we make throughout the day. And say we make some 1,000 decisions a day. Every decision is influenced by our worldview, which is created by our beliefs, which are things that we hold to be truths. And if our worldview is wrong or rooted in subjectivity, then it's liable to lead us in the wrong direction. But if it's rooted in truth, undeniable truth, then the worldview and then the beliefs that we have are undeniable, and the worldview we've created is concrete, it's unshakable. And so every decision that we approach, every scenario we walk into, every moment that passes us by, we have a basis on which we can make sound judgments. We can make decisions with conviction. And we can trust that we're led in the right direction because the truths that we orient our lives around are fundamental truths. They are ultimate truths of reality. And so we can't go wrong. And so not only do fundamental truths give us a sound foundation gives us confidence, and confidence in the future allows us to live peacefully. The pursuit of truth is necessary. We need to completely do away with our subjective realities that we've created for ourselves. We're not capable of creating our own moral frameworks and hierarchy of beliefs or creating our own book of truths. Truth has existed for all of time. We've simply been placed in time where these truths exist. It's not our job to create truths. The truths exist. Our job is to uncover them. And so that's why I've created this curriculum. It's to pursue truth. And so I hope that you do the same.